Hi, my name is Vaidila Satvika with the Department of Planning and Urban Design. This is a presentation on the city's initiative for urban centers. This is coming out of the city's comprehensive plan, and it seeks to transform suburban forms of development to urban mixed-use community centers. What are urban centers? We can think of them as higher density mixed-use locations where we are transforming the form of development from single-story, primarily auto-oriented land uses to multi-story buildings where there is a greater connection of the street network, where people can walk and know where they're going because there are sidewalks and the streets are more clearly delineated. These images capture different ideas of what Asheville's urban centers can become. We're trying to get the public's input to help us determine exactly what those zoning standards will be like so that together we can create urban centers that best reflect the desires of Ashevilleans. These images show some of the different elements that you may see in urban centers. Some highlight different types of architecture, modern or traditional. Others demonstrate the open space that can be available, whether as green space or as hardscape that is more of a plaza. We're looking for your input. What are the benefits of urban centers? We are seeking to mix in residential units with businesses, to connect housing and make them closer to jobs, or to be located right on top of a place of business so that someone can just walk downstairs and go to their job. We're seeking to reduce car trips by placing the first urban centers along the city's high-frequency transit network. We're hoping that the development of urban centers leads to more efficient buildings so that there is a greater tax return to the city. One key element in urban centers is a street network, a block structure, and this is a public benefit because streets provide places for people to park their cars, greater connectivity between different businesses, and they allow for street trees. Another benefit of urban centers is that it's infill development, and any type of infill development helps to preserve farmland and other undeveloped lands. Urban centers also lead to healthier neighborhoods because we're creating locations that are more walkable so that if you're in a nearby residential neighborhood, in the future, you can potentially walk to your urban center for goods or services or to visit somebody that you know living there. And finally, higher density neighborhoods can be environmentally sustainable. They can include green infrastructure to capture stormwater. They use land more efficiently by putting people and businesses in multi-story buildings. And that all is a better use of land that is becoming scarcer and scarcer. So what can we realistically accomplish? Some people may see a new zoning district as a possible paradise that we have to incorporate all the best possible elements to make these places great for the future. And we need to understand that there are limits to what we can do. For example, we don't have the ability to require affordable housing by the state law. And although that's a goal that we aspire toward, we can't require it. Other conditions may be that people may want to incorporate green roofs on all buildings that may be either cost prohibitive or the market can't really afford it for the location of the project. So we have to be reasonable, and at the same time we want to try to be true to our goals to create centers that really do meet the goals and the vision of everybody nearby. So where are the urban centers? In the city's comprehensive plan, there are 11 urban centers identified. The first 4 that we are focusing on are those located on the city's high-frequency transit network. That means that a bus passes these locations at least every 30 minutes. And if the transit master plan continues to be realized, those times will decrease to 20 minutes. In analyzing these sites, we reviewed different factors to think about urban versus suburban conditions. We reviewed block structure, intersections and streets, lots, buildings and building forms, sidewalks, trees, open space, and parking. Each of these factors can be suburban or more urban in their application. I'll go through these briefly, and On the website, you will be able to download the higher resolution posters that show the analysis for each of these factors. Blocks and block structure are key to creating an urban fabric. Blocks are the streets and the sidewalks that are around property. The more blocks that we have, the better people are able to interconnect from one location to another. Where block structure is weak, connectivity is challenging, and it's not as easy to develop buildings within large lots. Intersections and streets are important for the same reasons that block structure is important, because the intersections and the streets are the things that carry the people and the cars around different locations. Urban conditions have many more intersections than suburban, so as part of this project we would seek to incorporate more streets and intersections and also to create safe crossings for pedestrians. With lots, we've found that the size doesn't actually matter that much in the type of urban development. Lots can be large, but have multiple buildings on them. And likewise, they can be small and have multi-story structures that are very urban. A key challenge with small lots is the coordination between multiple landowners to realize a larger redevelopment. Buildings and building form is a key part of moving to an urban form of development. The suburban form typically has buildings set far back with a large parking lot in the front. For urban styles of development, buildings tend to be drawn closer to the street in order to make distances shorter. And really, that's a key concern in all of the transformation to urban design, is trying to reduce the distances between locations from larger distances that are typically designed for getting around by a car to smaller distances that are more along a human scale where people can walk around buildings and between blocks. Sidewalks are very important not only to keep pedestrians safe, but also to provide amenities that make people want to enjoy a walk so that they will choose to walk rather than to get into their car. Trees and open space are key to soften urban conditions, to make them more pleasant, to make them cooler when it's hot in the summertime, and to give people a place to socialize and to hang out. And parking is very important, and there are different types of parking. There's the off-street surface parking lot, which is typical in suburban shopping areas. Then there is more of the urban pattern of parking that is either curbside parking on the street or structured parking in a structured parking garage. So all of these different factors come into play when thinking about how to transition to an urban form of development. This slide shows a transformation of suburban development into an urban center. On the left is the before and on the right is the after. The images on the top show a plan view, which is the bird's eye view looking down, and the image below that is the perspective view, where you can see the elevations of the buildings to a little limited extent and the trees. And what you can see in the before is really the type of development that we have in many of these sites that we're considering rezoning. They're single-story structures with large parking areas and little pedestrian infrastructure. And if we look to the right, you see the after condition. What you see is that streets have been built into the parking lots to provide a greater sense of connectivity, to allow for buildings to line the edges of those streets, and to add many more sidewalks, street trees, and a greater variety of building types. The next 4 slides show a suburban development in transition. This first slide shows a typical single-story suburban mall with parking located all throughout the front. The next slide shows the integration of the first part of urban form, which is some streets coming into the development and a first building that looks like a civic structure in the middle of the parking lot. After that, greater number of streets are cut through the parking lot, and the smaller parcels are now built around with multi-story structures with ground floor retail and apartments above. And you can see that a parking structure is placed in the middle that is then lined with residential and retail buildings. Finally, The block structure is continued through the development to the back end so that more buildings can line streets and a real network of sidewalks and streets are integrated throughout the entire site. I'll go through these again and highlight some of the changes bit by bit. The first real change that we see is the street on the main corridor gets some traffic calming and street trees to give it more of an urban flavor. And there is a boulevard with parallel streets entering the site. Next, the highlighted line is the street that's added to the back that helps to break up the large parcel into smaller units. And then finally, that street is continued to the back where you have more of the same multi-story urban form of development. The next two slides are real examples. This one is from Duluth, Georgia, where a strip mall is transformed into multi-story mixed-use development. Just like in the drawing beforehand, what you see here is a parking structure that is lined with retail and housing above. This example is from Seattle, Washington, where a vacant lot was turned into a high-density mixed-use development that has a lot of green infrastructure. What that means is they are capturing a lot of environmental benefits by focusing stormwater into the site. They've actually daylit a stream so that along this 2.7 acres of newly created public open space, people can look at the water as it's flowing, and it has attracted wildlife. And at the same time, they've added over 500 housing units and 50,000 square feet of retail. So higher density mixed-use development can be green. And the last few considerations are to keep the streets in mind that are adjacent to the sites that we're considering. Although our primary consideration is the land use and the zoning changes that we can implement, we know that streets and land use interrelate, and streets can change to become more pedestrian-oriented and safer. And we want to know your thoughts if you have particular concerns or ideas that you'd like to share with us. Because the city can change streets. This image of a before and after is downtown on College Street, where a 4-lane undivided street was converted to a boulevard with only 2 lanes of traffic for automobiles, but bike lanes on both sides and a lot of pedestrian infrastructure. So to review the analysis that we've developed, please take a look at the higher resolution posters on the website and let us know your thoughts. For next steps, we aim to develop the specific zoning standards for urban centers over the next couple months, and then we will hold a public meeting to share those specific standards with the public before going to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then ultimately to City Council for their review and public hearing. If you'd like to contact me for any ideas that you have or just to understand some of these issues, feel free to contact me by email or phone, or you can visit our website, asheville.nc.gov/urban centers. Thank you.